Welcome to the Superbold Podcast. I'm Fred Joyal, and I have a really remarkable guest, a good friend of mine, Jay Samit. He is an author, innovator, disruptor. He's had an epic and bold career in the digital world. We're going to talk all about that, but he has shared that knowledge in two really excellent books. They are bestsellers. The first book came out a few years ago called Disrupt You, Master Personal Transformation, Seize Opportunity, and Thrive in the Era of Endless Innovation. I'm reading the whole subtitles because they really describe these books, and that is what is in these books. The second book, which came out last year, is Future Proofing You. 12 Truths for Creating Opportunity, Maximizing Wealth, and Controlling Your Destiny in an Uncertain World. Jay, welcome to the Superbold Podcast, my friend.
So honored to spend time with you, Fred.
It's hard to figure out where to start because you've been involved in so much over the years, a lot of it in the music industry, and a lot of it in the technological disruption of that industry. What pulled you into the music industry? How did that start?
I was lucky to start on the internet in 1978. So wow. For those that weren't born then, no one knows what I was talking about back then. There were probably 20 of us on the internet. And it became real obvious to me that we would all have computers and that all the stuff that now seems common sense seemed common sense. The difference was I was the only person that thought it was common sense. And as a young kid, you figure common sense is everywhere and this is going to happen quickly. I was the first person to put video on a computer, and I thought the TV and a computer would become one in the 1980s. So you realize that the world moves at different paces. So I got the good fortune to work with some of the boldest or most super bold people on the planet. You know, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Richard Branson and Steven Spielberg and all these people. And I learned from them. And you notice a pattern, and you notice that it's not the people that went to the best schools or the people that have the highest IQs that become successful. And you can teach it. So similar to you teaching people to be bold, future-proofing you was taking a young man who grew up on welfare, mentoring him one day a week for a year with these principles, gave him no money, no business contacts, and spoiler alert, self-made millionaire in under a year. Everyone can do this. And it comes down to that positive mindset, which you and I both agree on.
Yeah, well, of course, this is how I've gotten here with, about 90% mindset. But you spell it out in both your books really well. And I love the fact that at this point in your life, you decided that you could really systematize this teaching of what you've learned along the way.
I'm not trying to make any money. I've got enough. When I was trying to figure out ways to pay back, one of the first things I did was, could I teach this at the university level? So I started teaching at the largest engineering school in the country, USC, and my best students did $100 million in a semester. Problem was I kept on having students drop out of school because why hang around for the diploma? And when the chancellor, was laying into me about that, I said, who do you think's going to endow this school? Right?
Yeah. The guy who dropped out as a sophomore doesn't feel the need to call himself an alumnus when he is not.
So that was interesting. And there you're dealing with, bright, highly motivated, people. But then I took it the next step in writing Disrupt You to show anybody can do it. We're taught enough to become workers, right? The old joke is a young guy's working at a company, sees the boss drive up in a brand new Ferrari, and he's eyeing, and the boss says, "You like that car?" And the kid goes, "Yeah." He goes, "If you work really, really hard this year, I'll be able to buy another one." And so why spend your life making someone else's dream come true? Why listen to people that gave up on their dreams that tell you to take the safe job when in fact there's no such thing as a safe job? 100-year-old companies disappear. Half of all jobs will disappear over the next 5 years. Let that sink in. It's not just autonomous vehicles replacing truck drivers. It's AI systems replacing middle management and accounting and chatbots replacing sales and customer service. So at the same time that this pandemic disrupted so many companies, the 100 richest people in the world doubled their net worth. Let that sink in for a second. Not doubled what they make in a year, doubled their net worth. There's a new self-made billionaire every 17 hours. I don't know what you did this past weekend, Fred, but you're a slacker.
It wasn't. I was not one of them because I really slacked this weekend.
Yeah. And so when you take the blinders off and you show people what it is, and it comes down to some basic common sense things. Entrepreneurs don't sell things. They solve things. Solve a problem for 5 people, you have friends. Solve for 1 million, you're wealthy. Solve for 1 billion, you change history. I mean, no one ever went into a hardware store to buy a 1/4-inch drill bit. What they wanted was a 1/4-inch hole. The drill bit made that possible. So you don't have to create these giant products. I mean, making the iPhone was really, really hard, okay? Billions of dollars, tons of geniuses. Making the little plastic case that you spend $30 for and costs 16 cents to make, that's pretty easy. That's a $68 billion a year accessory market, okay? But you got to be bold. And your book teaches people that have some intimidation. Where I'm probably different than most people, maybe I was dropped on my head too much. I didn't have to be convinced to be bold. There were zero expectations for me. I'm dyslexic. So as a kid, when they divided the reading groups in first grade into the Eagles, the Hawks, and the Mud Hens, you just know you don't want to be a mud hen. And so where most people are caught up in worrying about what other people think, it dawned on me real early that no one's really thinking about you, right? Your biggest mistake, you notice it, the rest of the world doesn't. And so you have to fail your way forward. Henry Ford, Walt Disney, their first companies went belly up. You talk about beginning my career, 2 guys I worked with at the start of my career had what I thought was a genius idea. Now we're going back. Hook up street lights to a computer to synchronize and reduce urban congestion. Company was called Trafo Data. City planners didn't know what a computer was, so Bill Gates and Paul Allen's first company went bust. Their second company, Microsoft, did a little bit better. And I can go on and on. The point is, when you fail, you don't end up where you start. You either earn or you learn, but either way, you're propelled forward.
I want to stop there because I want you to say that again, because I don't want to breeze by that concept because it's so powerful that failure puts you in a different place. You are not where you started anymore. You have 100%. New things. Yeah.
Think about a toddler. They don't wake up one day and go, "Mom, I'm going to walk across the room." They get up, they stumble, they fall, they get up, they stumble and fall. Eventually they figure it out. When you play a video game, you're cruising along and you hit some immovable object, this obstacle that you can't get past. You hammer it, you get past it, and guess what? There's another obstacle. So obstacles are opportunities in disguise. And the more you look at your problems as your solution, the further you'll be. A lot of people think, being successful makes you happy. No, being happy makes you successful. Because when you start off, and I start every day with saying 2 things to myself when I look in the mirror. Today can be better than yesterday, and I have the power to make it so. And as silly and tree-hugging hippie as that sounds, what it does is it releases dopamine to the neurotransmitters. It lights up the synaptic nerves like lights on a Christmas tree. And suddenly your mind's open to possibilities, as opposed to that person that comes in every morning to the office. Oh, you won't believe what happened to me. Oh, such a problem. That person couldn't see an opportunity if it hit them in the face. So it all starts with having a growth mindset. And so with Vin, and I think you've met Vin, the young man that I mentored.
Yeah.
How do you take somebody whose parents didn't achieve, who was on welfare, who didn't believe in himself? How do you switch that switch really quick? And it's simple. I lied to him. Not proud of that fact, but there's a psychological principle called the Pygmalion Effect. A professor went to a school, tested all the kids, and told the teachers 3 of the students would be super learners, super achievers, and in essence, super bold that year. And at the end of the year, when they tested the kids, those 3 kids excelled everybody. Fun detail, the professor lied. He just picked 3 names out of a hat. But if you tell people they're special and you treat them special, they become special. So when a successful guy like me tells Vin that I've interviewed over 100 people and he's the only one that has all the attributes to be a self-made millionaire, he was going to believe it. When in fact, he's the only person I interviewed because it would be unfair to cherry pick somebody. And so that voice that's been holding you back your whole life, if you can change that narrative in your head, you can change your reality outside of your head. So it comes down to, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, it's that is an old axiom, but it is nothing has changed about us that has made that not true. I want to swing back to dyslexia, because there's a shift in perception about dyslexia that's been going on. Would you probably in the past 10 years to basically say it's more of an advantage than a disability?
So Richard Branson, dyslexic, Walt Disney, dyslexic. I can go through the list of people. 1 out of 3 CEOs of Fortune 500 companies dyslexic. So we're wired different. And in my case, I'll tell you where it became an advantage. So back when I was a kid, they didn't have fancy words. You were just stupid. Okay. So you
just couldn't read or whatever. So yeah,
you didn't want to be embarrassed in front of your classmates. So when there was a group project, I put my hand up first to lead the thing, and then I delegate what I can't do. So I figured out the secret to life, at like 7 years old. Don't master the task, master the process. To put that in other words, you don't have to know any skill. You can hire that, because most people just want a job. The only 2 things you need for success are insight and perseverance. So when I saw Star Wars, it blew my mind. There was not a movie like it. It was unbelievable. And I was coming out of school and I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to make Hollywood special effects. I knew no one in Hollywood. I knew nothing about computers, and I knew nothing about how to make special effects. But I knew that Star Wars changed everybody's demand and people would want that. So I printed up a business card for $1, made up my company name, Jasmine. Jay Samit was mine. But I didn't make myself head of the company, because nobody's going to trust their feature film on a 21-year-old kid. And I just made myself head of sales, and I went out and hustled special effects work on movies. And the second you get it, then you run an ad and hire the people that know how to do it. I created the first auction on the internet that you now know as eBay. I worked with Reid Hoffman on LinkedIn. I've taught at the most prestigious engineering school. I'm not an engineer. I'm attached to all these innovations. I have an Emmy in my office for video on demand, creating that. You can hire people to do those things. What you can't hire is somebody to tell you to start.
It's a big word, start. It's where most people get hung up, even on the simplest things, whether it's exercising or changing your life. It's what are you going to do this moment?
Most people waste today's energy replaying yesterday's failure. Okay?
Wow.
When the sooner you start, the more time you have to achieve. When I'm on the speaking circuit as you are, and inevitably when I have speak at large places, people go, is now a good time to start a business? And I always answer, now is the second best time to start a business. A year ago was better, right?
Yeah.
Some of your biggest companies were started during depressions, by the way. If you look
Sure.
through the list, it's unbelievable. And the other thing is, when I got out of college and you look for jobs to apply for, it dawned on me that any job that they're hiring, somebody's already done, which means that there's somebody more qualified, which means I'll never get a job because there's somebody else that's done the job. But if you do something no one else has ever done, you're by definition the best of the world at it. So when this young man, his idea is you want to do social media marketing, right? You're basically homeless, couch surfing at people's houses. You're not going to get Coca-Cola to hire you to run their campaign. But I said, instead of saying social media marketing, why don't you find one niche that no one is focused on, that everyone's talking about, and make yourself the social media expert for that one niche. The job's the same, but the perception of customers is different. So suddenly he went from nobody hiring to companies spending tens of thousands of dollars a month with them. It was just him changing his perception of himself and his skills.
And yeah, and I feel like your books the title should be Disrupt You or Else, and future-proofing you or else, because that's the implicit part of it.
I think people are living the or else. In future-proofing you, I included a letter that was written to me after the first book that just like blew me away, and I asked permission as I tell you what's in it, where a woman was saying she had started a business, had lost all her money. She was late 40s, 50, and she decided she was just going to kill herself. So she called her grown daughter to say goodbye, and her daughter laughed at her. And that shocked her. Like, I'm telling you, I'm about to kill myself, and you're laughing. You're killing yourself over money? That's the dumbest thing in the world. And she gave her mom my book, and that's why the mom had written me. And now she had done another business and was successful this time, and was obviously so glad she didn't end it all. And there's nothing more dramatic than that example. The fact that I've heard from people in 140 countries shows that it's a universal desire to achieve, and yet we just teach the bare minimum of how to, fit in and work on an assembly line when those jobs are being done by robots.
Well, and it's the whole educational system hasn't adapted to that at all, even though they're talking about, oh, we're preparing you for this new world that you're coming into. I don't see that happening. I meet college grads all the time, and I talk to college students all the time, and I'm saying, has anybody taught you this? Right? Has anybody taught you mindset? Has anybody taught you, everybody loves the word innovation, but nobody talks about how that's actually executed.
Remember high school trigonometry? Doesn't that help you during trigonometry season every year? No one teaches people about taxes. Nobody teaches people about any of these things because the system was designed to create workers. I mean,
and that's what I tell people all the time. They say like, most people want to be workers. And I say, yeah, that's ideal for you. That's why you start a business, because most people want a paycheck. That is a blessing for an entrepreneur.
I'm not going to say that it's easy. There's no, escalator to the top, but there's also no barrier. There's no gatekeeper. And it's much easier today than it was at any time in history. You have crowdfunding to raise money. You've venture. Think about it for a second. I've raised hundreds of millions of dollars from venture capital fund firms over the years. And I've had students just go out. And if you take the mindset, their sole job is to give somebody money.
Right. They're sitting on it, looking for a place to put it.
The only reason they're taking the meeting is because they want to give you the money. The only thing stopping them is if you say something stupid. So learn what they're expecting to say, learn the language, and it's that straightforward. And it's global.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is why immigrants do so well. Is they assume they're starting with nothing and that nobody's going to help them, so they got to figure it out themselves.
Well, it's more than that. They took the bold step to leave a situation where they were. They said, it can't be worse there. I'll try. Whether they were an immigrant as a refugee, so they didn't have a choice or whatever, they made that step to change what's happening. So when that person's at that entry level job, is sweeping up or whatever it might be, that's not their identity. They see it as a stepping stone on a path. And you're right. There's a major VC firm who will only fund companies where one of the founders are an immigrant or the first generation child of an immigrant, because most of your Fortune 500 companies were founded by that, for that very basic reason. And that's what also brings what seems like the greatest talent to this country, is that American dream, is people that are dreaming are creating. You know, what happened to this country over hundreds of years is it got settled by settlers that just settle in. All right. They're not trying to blaze new frontiers. A guy who's very famous nowadays, when he was in college, he wanted to be an entrepreneur, but he didn't know if he could make any money. So he challenged himself, could he live on $1 a day? So could he live for 1 month on $30? And he bought oranges in bulk and whatever. And at the end of that month, Elon Musk said, I can do this because I can always find a way to make $1 a day. And so his first company, he didn't have an apartment. He slept under his desk at night. They had one PC. The website was only up for part of the day because they had to code at night. They went down to the YMCA to shower. And now he's the richest man in the world.
And it's all one lifetime. It's not like he did this in 6 lifetimes. It's all the arc of one life.
And that's the other thing. You can now make generational wealth very quickly. And the reason is you're one click away from 7 billion consumers. You only have to be right for a nanosecond, right? And you see this all the time on Shark Tank is a great example, where somebody solves a problem, a simple problem. I'll give you 2 examples that just come to mind right now. A woman named Sandy Stein was a flight attendant, and she realized she was always fumbling in her purse to get her keys. She goes, man, I'm wasting a lot of time doing that. What if I make a little clasp that you can just put in your purse and you get your keys? She became a millionaire in 4 months just selling these. Okay. No business experience. The other one, which I wrote about in my book, which was amazing. It's the middle of the week. Every parent can relate to this. It's nearing bedtime, and your child's working on making some poster board for school that's due the next day for some project, and they mess up the piece of paper. Mommy, please go to the store. Please get me another one. Da-da. And the mom did, and she was so annoyed with this that she took a ruler and made lines on it so that they could write on the poster board neatly. And the next day she goes, why don't they sell paper with lines on it? Make a long story short, she filed a patent, and you can do patent for dummies. And she got the biggest paper company to license it. And with 0 employees, no job, she makes millions of dollars a year.
Yeah, it's solve. What problem are you solving? And I run into people all the time that I'm sure you see them too. Is they have a solution looking for a problem, right, rather than the reverse. And because they're in love with something, or they're satisfying some personal need of theirs, or they just want to make money.
And by the way, when those things crash and burn and fail, you may find a solution that they didn't, a problem that they didn't think of because they were so focused in a different area. And you just pivot and take that technology and take it to the next place. I mean, everybody thinks Google.
I never discourage entrepreneurs because they'll tell me their idea and I'll go, that's not going to work. But I want them to do it anyway, because as you say, in that may be the tiniest thing that is the actual business, that if they just listen to the marketplace.
I mean, remember, Twitter was a music service. I mean, I can go on and on. But what happens is everybody starts off with an obvious idea, and most obvious ideas suck. But as you start getting deeper into the woods, you discover, something that nobody got that far to do. So a great example was when broadband, the ability to have this video came about, people already had online dating. There was dating before swiping your finger. And you used to see a still picture of the person, read their bio and email. And they said, we're going to do a dating website with videos. It was called Tune In, Hook Up. So you could see the video, hear the personality. The first video was a guy standing in front of, I can't make this up, the elephants at the zoo of why you should go out with them. Well, brilliant interface, Tune In, Hook Up. They did everything right from an engineering standpoint, but there was a problem that they didn't see in their business plan. No one wanted to date these losers. But they looked at the data. They looked at something that they didn't have going in. And though nobody wanted to date these people, they wanted to show their friends these videos of how bad they were. So they changed the name of Tune In, Hook Up to YouTube and became billionaires without a penny in revenue. So it's those insights. The only competitive advantage any business has in the 21st century is to get insights from your data faster than the competition. And the only way you get those insights is by trying and doing.
I see that happen so often. A good friend of mine, she launched her business with this little dental device. It was a dental tool, really. And she showed it to me. And a lot of people come to me with ideas, and I say, "Yeah, that's great." And she showed it to me, and I went, "Oh, well, that would actually work." But what happened is she thought it was for something else. She thought it was for people to use at home while they're brushing their teeth, which is like impossible to get people to do more stuff to take care of their teeth at home. It's hard enough to get them to brush their teeth. But she realized all of these dentists said, no, this is a flexible retractor. Nobody makes this. And so she went all the way to the clinical side with it, and now has made 10 different versions for 10 different applications of this device, all because she figured out how to make it work, and then just literally walked around a dental trade show showing it to people, and found me because I was standing there promoting my book. And I immediately introduced her to the largest dental distributor, the product development guy in that company. So I quantum leaped her over about 40 layers.
Well, that brings up a huge point that I have in future-proofing you. There's this mythology of the self-made person, the self-made man or woman. You got to do it on your own. Don't fly solo. You're going to need mentors. You'll be amazed at how many people are just like Fred that want to help you. Okay. And you're going to need a series of mentors in your career. Zuckerberg, amazing what he started with, but he then got Steve Jobs as a mentor, because there's a big difference between having a good idea and running a multi-billion-dollar company. Everybody takes mentors. And so LinkedIn is this great tool to find people in your industry that are ahead of you, that are writing or speaking, and don't do the, hey, email cold, will you be my mentor? That's like walking to Barnes going, hey, do you want to have my baby? Seek people out, start a dialogue, build a two-way street.
So I should stop doing that, is what you're saying, because that I had no idea why that was failing, but it's because it's trying to move things along too quickly with the baby thing. I know enough not to do it in business.
But it's amazing, because successful people don't look at the world as competition. They figured out that it's not competition that got them to where they are. It's not this zero-sum game that there's only, a lot of people have this mentality that there's this pile of money and either you have it or I have it. My last company I sold for $200 million. If I told you I was starting a new company and I'd give you 10% for $10,000 and you said yes, what do I now have? I have $10,000 and $90,000 in stock. I can buy with that. I could do. So entrepreneurs literally create money from thin air. That's how, Amazon could lose money for a decade and create the greatest wealth ever created. So people understand that they can help create something that wasn't there, that you can add value. And I know you feel this way, if you believe the purpose of life is to live a life of purpose, then the greatest purpose you can have is improving what you were born into, improving the world around you, whatever that may be, whether it's a dental device or climate change. I mean, every problem makes life easier, better, more enjoyable.
And it is not a zero-sum game. It is all boats rising. Every bit of innovation and technology finds a way to expand itself, so that we live in a world where poverty is shrinking, health is increasing. Despite the fact that we have wars going on, we have less wars in this century than any other century before. So the world is getting better, and wealth is getting better. Now, it's certainly uneven at certain points in this country, and that will always be a challenge. But you have to realize what is in your control. Your energy should go to what is in your control, and it's going all the way back to that word we talked about earlier, which is start today. Right. Whatever it is, start doing something.
For years with my first book, I toured the world telling everybody sooner or later your life's going to get disrupted. Okay? Post-pandemic, I don't have to make the argument. People believe me. But disruption isn't about what happens to you. It's about how you respond to what happens to you. Okay? When everybody was worried about getting, the virus in their lungs and dentists had to do something, you responded by creating a device to keep dentists safe. All right? You saw a void, you saw a problem, and you built a solution. And there's always new opportunities to do that. And, every time I have what I call thigh slappers, where you just go, oh, why didn't I think of that? I mean, some of the silliest, easiest things, create massive amount of wealth. And the reason why there is such wealth disparity is because we're so interconnected. If you solve a major problem, you can reach millions and millions of customers for virtually no money. They're one click away.
There's so many ways. I mean, just the idea that, so many businesses, I think about Facebook, and the reason Facebook succeeded after Friendster failed is they kept buying servers. Because Friendster, which was a precursor, they kept crashing because they didn't have enough servers. So Zuckerberg said, I need more than enough servers all the time because the traffic's going to get so crazy. Yeah, you don't even have that problem anymore. You can get as many servers as you want today.
Well, AWS solves that. And before the web had even made it to China, there was a guy in China that said, this is going to be huge. It's going to be global. And we got over 1 billion people here. I'm going to get into this. Now, to feed himself, he was trying to get a job at KFC and they wouldn't hire him. So I'm just trying to put how poor this guy was. Couldn't get a job behind the counter at Kentucky Fried Chicken. He started his company letting people figure out how to buy stuff. And he didn't admit to the world until he was a billionaire that for the first 5 years of Alibaba, I'm talking about Jack Ma. Jack didn't even own a computer. He didn't have enough money to own a computer. You could go to an internet cafe and run something there. You could hire people that knew how to do stuff. And I met Jack early on before anything took off, and he could just see the determination that this gentleman had. He stood out. And that's the other thing about your ideas. You don't have to have it all figured out, right? You just have to get that next step, and a big, bold idea will attract brilliant people like a light attracts moths. And so when people, go, well, all these people. No, I didn't know anybody. But whatever idea I was working on made the phone ring. And the easiest sale you'll ever close is when someone calls you, right? And so, I was literally, and you know the story, sitting in my little company of 30 people, and I get a call of a guy doing the worst Arkansas accent I ever heard, pretending to be President Bill Clinton. And I embarrassed myself because I made the president of the United States prove to me that he was the president of the United States. Because why would the president be calling me? I mean, this was outside of the realm of possibilities. And so when I started realizing that you make these things happen, it's not, some cosmic thing, but the more you propel yourself forward, the more that the only person that can stop you is you. And so your book helps people change that inner voice and gets them to take those steps out of their comfort zone. And the second you get outside of that zone and you realize the zone didn't exist, you can walk anywhere, work anywhere, do anything. I mean, believe me, I walked into some meetings going like, I got to act like an adult here, but I can't believe I'm sitting here. It just happens. And you realize everybody else went through the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I remember back in my junior copywriter days, I was just, for some reason, I loved advertising so much that was my first foray into real boldness. And I ended up meeting, we were in a big 5 agency with the LA office of it. And the CEO and the president had come into town and visited. And somehow I got to meet them. And I was just really playful and funny. I treated them like regular guys, and they were so used to people not talking to them. I mean, and at one point, the CEO talks about how he always gets food on his tie. In the middle of this, we were probably having lunch or whatever in the conference room. The next day, I got in the elevator, and there he walks in with the president, and then everybody, he says, and they told me this later. They said, we get in an elevator, everybody stops talking to each other, and so they see me and they say, "Hey, how are you doing, Fred?" And I said, "Good." And I was just wondering what Ted had for breakfast, and I lifted his tie up to look at it, and he just busted out laughing, and the rest of the people in the elevator going, "This kid's crazy," right? But I was the guy they remembered. Within 2 years from that, I had already spun out and started 1-800-Dentist. They asked me to come in as a creative director to win Ericsson Electronics, which we did. So that was just as outsourcing. So I did, in the 2-year arc, I went, while other people were trying to get to be copywriter, I went from junior copywriter to independent creative director.
The only way you're going to leapfrog is by being bold. My favorite story from the ad agency stuff, and I wrote about it in Disrupt You, was a young guy got a job at a big giant agency, stuck in the bowels of the agency in some cubicle, moving numbers around, literally wanted to shoot himself. There was nothing going on, nothing creative. He didn't get to see anything. So he was Googling some of the creative directors, the big famous guys' names, and he realized nobody had bought those keywords. And every famous person does Google themselves to check what's out there. And so he spent $9, bought the keywords of the 5 biggest creative directors. When they Googled themselves, it says, "Hey, I want to work for you. Click here to see my portfolio." 3 of them brought him in. All 3 offered him jobs. He quintupled his salary and instantly was doing creative work. $9 investment. That's a mocha latte cappuccino or whatever.
Yeah. No, it's just from thinking about it. I want to go back to the idea of mentors, because you talked about, don't just say, could you be my mentor? A lot of times that's all this array of mentors. Some of the key mentors in my life told me one thing, and it go back to the ad agency business. The first time I walked in an ad agency, I said, "Oh, these are my people. I could do this," because I had no idea what I wanted to do with myself. And so the general manager, who was married to my best friend's babysitter, okay, it's the weird connection. I said, "I really want to work here." And he said, "Well, I'm not going to hire you. You don't know how to write advertising. What you need to do is go to this night school that's being taught by creative directors. Go there for 6 months, and then you'll get a job." That was it was 2 beautiful aspects of it. Is he wasn't going to grease the rails for me and give me a job I didn't deserve. And He told me what to do. And that was the end of his mentoring. Everything in my life, my business career sprung from that sentence. So that's the power of a mentor. Don't think that it has to be like I need to be coached every week, and they're not going to want to give me that time. Sometimes they're going to spark that one thing. And I think your books do that for people too.
That anybody that's charging you to be a mentor isn't a mentor.
It's right? A paid coach. Yeah.
It's, there's millions of people that want to do it for the right reason.
And there are rules like respect their time. And if they tell you to do something, do it. Don't talk to them the next month not having done what they recommended you do the month before. That's abusive, but it also shows them you just want to chat. You just want to say somebody successful instead of
what Vin told me about 6 months into the mentoring when he'd already made $500,000. He said, a lot of things you told me to do, I knew were absolutely wrong. I didn't want to do. It doesn't make sense to do, but I did them because, who am I to disagree? And when it worked, it like flipped his mind not to listen to me, but to be open to listen. Right? And I have yet to meet somebody I can't learn something from. I do not have the answers. Of the companies I've run, I've never walked into a meeting and said, this is what we're going to do. I have an idea. I always say, I have a half an idea. How can the rest of you? And so my whole resume is taking credit for other people's work. I mean, that's what a boss really is. It's the brilliant things that people bring to it and add to it that you don't think of, the different perspectives. And one of the 12 truths that is a post-pandemic truth that didn't exist before is no matter what your business is, for most of history, you didn't get to hire the best people. You get to hire the best people that live within 5 or 10 miles of you. Now with remote workers, you can hire the best people on the planet. And they may live somewhere that they work for less money. They may have a different culture or perspective that brings something to it that you wouldn't have in your world and open new markets and new ideas. And the more I do this, and the companies whose boards I sit on, we do this, we suddenly have products take off in countries that nobody ever thought of, but it solves something local that we weren't aware of. And I can't stress enough that this is the greatest time to start virtual companies. You don't need expensive rent and an edifice and all that. My first company, I ran out of my house. That doesn't sound strange nowadays, but my kids were toddlers and we played a game. If the phone rang, who could stay quiet the longest got a toy. Bribery is parenting, but nobody ever knew they were calling my house. And all my clients, I never had a client in the same city where I lived, so all my clients were somewhere else, and you could do that. But now people actually respect companies that aren't wasting money on
office
overhead.
Space. Yeah. No, I think back of at the amount of rent I paid with 800 dentists over 30 years, and it's mind blowing. And we kind of had to do most of that at the time. Now, if I were to start that business today, my overhead would be 20% of what it was for most of the 30 years. And that's a lot more profit and a lot more stability.
Well, another way of saying that's less money that you have to raise. That's less risk to try a new business. I mean, before you could put stuff in somebody else's cloud and just pay for what you needed, you had to have a room full of winky blinks, a bunch of iron and servers. And, engineers would come to me and we got to spend more money on this. And I have no answer other than I'll find the money because I don't know if we need it or not. Right. But now you don't have any of that. The infrastructure's there.
The last phone switch we bought was over $1 million. The next iteration was you don't need a phone switch.
Right.
So that's the amazing world we live in, along with what you're talking about, all of these outside resources and international resources
And the next
are.
version of chatbots, you won't need nearly the number of employees that you had at a 1-800-dentist.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that you're doing, which is really wonderful, are your watercolors. If you do nothing else after this conversation, folks, go to Jay's website, which is jaysamit.com, as you would probably expect. He's certainly been around marketing long enough to have grabbed his name. And these are breathtaking watercolors. I look at them, and today was the first day I really looked at all of them at once on your site, and I just thought, I want like 40 of these. They're just wonderful, Jay. And it's pure creativity that you're doing, and it's talk about how this outlet came out and what it gives you and what it's blossomed into.
So for those people that have the ability to clear their mind and meditate, you're amazing. Jay can't do that. But watercolor is a medium where you can only paint in the brief seconds that the paper's wet. There's no painting over, there's no do-over, there's no copy and mistake. So it's complete concentration. So for me, it was meditation my whole life. And when the pandemic happened, when people were locked in their houses and people were focused on the negative, I wanted to show people a silver lining. Obviously, if you got the disease or someone died, there's no silver lining. But for the vast majority, you suddenly had the gift of time. Use it wisely. So I decided to open the kimono and share my private life. I never let people know that I did art. And I decided to post and do a painting a day and put it up for the sole purpose of inspiring people to do something. What happened, back to the be bold and put stuff out there, was people liked it. I was amazed. I heard from a prestigious gallery in New York. They signed me. They did a show. My artwork's now bought by collectors. This is mind-blowing to me. And when you sell through a gallery, they tell you the name of the person that bought it. And the people that buy art from galleries are names that you know. Like, and so I always imagine that they have a crack in the wall of their bathroom or something that was just the right size to cover it. It's humbling. It's wonderful. And I so enjoy it. I just finished illustrating a children's book, which is just a wonderful experience. I just submitted one of my watercolors for a very famous rockers album cover. I don't know if I'll get it, but it's a wonderful new side to have my artwork. And similar to the half idea, I realized I only paint half a painting. The other half happens in the viewer's mind, because people tell me why they bought the painting or what it meant to them or what was in there. And sometimes it was the same idea I was thinking of, and sometimes it was something in their life that they brought to it. I did a cowboy, sitting in the back of a pickup truck thinking about something, and it sold to a guy in Comanche, Texas. I'll never forget that. He was a former champion rodeo guy, and it was the first painting, he's not an art guy, that expressed what he felt about his life and his art and what he did. And I'm like, wow, you're not going to get me on some bucking bronco, but it's just so gratifying to be able to do that. And so nice of you to say that you love it.
Well, I so appreciate your time and knowing you so well and knowing how generous you are with your knowledge. And I just want to tell anybody out there who's trying to figure out what to do with themselves, it's available. These two books that Jay has written, they are manuals for immediately turning your life around. So do not hesitate to get Disrupt You and Foolproofing You, and read them both and do something. Do something. Just like my books. My book isn't something to read. It's something to spark action for you.
And on that point, and thanks for the plug, I don't sell anything, in this space. This is about helping people. Anybody that's made it this long into the podcast is serious. If you go to my website, jaysamit.com, I have free workbooks for both future-proofing you and disrupt you that you can download. So as you do each chapter, you can do the exercise and you can start building a roadmap for your future. Too often we read something and then it goes in one ear and out the other. So those tools are free. They're on the website. Take advantage of them. And I look forward to seeing what people create. And love the book, as you know.
So everything is possible if you choose to make it that way. So I hope this inspires you. You've lived a bold life and you continue to, but now you are at a phase of your life which is about contribution, and your contribution is tremendous. So, Jay, thank you very much for being on the episode, and everyone dial into Jay and gather up his wisdom.